I got asked to speak on team member retention, which excited me for many reasons, but let's just start with some facts. Over 4 million people quit their job in November 2021. That's not fired, right? Quit, the Great Resignation. I'm sure many of you have heard of it, right? It's a term that's been thrown around a lot in the news in different places. 4 million people quit their jobs in November 2021. But why are they quitting? There's tons of reasons. As a matter of fact, there's about 4.3 million reasons that people can find that they quit their jobs, right? I think one thing that we have to accept is that whether we like it or not, because I don't always like change, whether we like it or not, the pandemic of 2020 changed us forever. It changed us forever. It changed the world forever. And I think people now find themselves in a place where they're in a worker's market, right? Just like we talked about. You're exactly right. People are throwing Indeed ads everywhere. Come work for us. We offer more money. Offering crazy things you've never seen before because people have understood that the pandemic changed something. And now people are looking for something different. They know that now there's more options out there. But we got to keep them because we don't want people leaving our team. We don't want people leaving our family. And I think I have the answer. And I know it's going to sound crazy, but I need you to follow me for the next few minutes, okay? We need to use the F word more, all right? Oh, you guys aren't surprised by that? We need to use the F word more, okay? So here's the deal. When you have a team member who makes a mistake, a big mistake, you need to use the F word more, all right? I'm sure some of you are using it plenty right now, okay? When you have someone who does a good job, you need to use the F word. That's the great thing about the F word. It has a range, right? It can be bad, it can be good. So today, we're talking about the F word, all right? That's what we're talking about. Now, if you got real excited that I was about to stand up here and swear at you for the next 30 minutes, I hate to let you down. The word's feedback, all right? That's our F word we're talking about today. We're talking about feedback. Now, let me just take off the super energetic comedian hat for a second and tell you why this is so important to me. Feedback is huge in my life because I left a job a few years ago, and I was good at the job. I continued to meet and exceed goals, right? I left that job, and when I went to go back, they told me that they didn't want me. They told me that they had no spot for me. And when I said why, they were very honest. They gave me really great feedback. They said, you're a toxic person. You're mean. You're hateful. You treat people terribly. Now, I hope that's not the same impression I give off anymore, but it took a lot of work. It took 4 years of diving in. I was just talking to Aaron about it at lunch. It took 4 years of diving in and getting real with myself, and it would have completely changed my whole career path if someone had just given me feedback. And it'll do the same for your people. And so today, here's my goal. I want to talk about feedback, how important it is to our people, that we give it well, and then we're going to get to the part that you're not going to like me, all right? The part where you receive it well, right? I expect people to get up and walk out on that part, so no harm, no foul, okay? I get it, right? It's not easy to listen to. So let's jump into it. Let me go ahead and just tell you how important that it is by showing you a few stats. Because what's a pro presenter or a PowerPoint presentation without a few stats, right? Here we go. Number one, 65% of team members, because we don't say employees, 65% of team members desire more feedback. Some people out there right now are like, that's a joke, that's a lie, right? Nobody likes feedback. Well, we're going to get to that in a second, right? Companies that invest in regular employee feedback have 14.9% lower turnover rates than organizations where employees do not receive feedback. Let's keep it going. 40% of employees who receive little to no feedback are actively disengaged from their work. Raise your hands. How many people got disengaged people working for you right now? I know. If your hand's not up in this air right now, you are a liar, right? I'm going to tell you like it is, all right? You've got disengaged people that work with you, right? Some of them, here's the scary part, you may not even know. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit too. 69% of employees say they would work harder if they felt their efforts were being recognized through feedback. And finally, 43% of highly engaged employees receive feedback at least once a week. Now, here's the thing. I got good news for you. Well, good news, bad news, okay? If you're thinking to yourself like, oh, do I give feedback? Have I got a culture of feedback in my organization right now? Well, guess what? You do. You've already built a culture of feedback. Congratulations. You've got it. But in sticking with our cool video game theme here, I got a question for you. Is it rad or is it bad? All right? Now, that's a power glove. I don't know if you know that, all right? Any nerds in here recognize the power glove? There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Is it rad or is it bad, to use a 90s term? Because listen, I had someone tell me this one time, and this doesn't just go for feedback, it goes for anything in your life. How many times have you seen something in your organization, in your family, and you look at it and you say, hey, I'm going to get to that one day. I'm going to get to it one day. You know, let's just put that on the back burner for now. I had a leader tell me one time, he was like, you know what that's like? It's taking a pot full of dirt and going and putting it in the corner of your house and saying, hey, I'm going to plant a plant there eventually. If you come back in 3 months and you haven't planted that plant, I promise you, something has grown there. Whether you want it to or not, something has grown there. And with feedback, what happens is if we don't pay attention to our feedback culture, if we don't actively work at it, we're going to create a culture anyway, but it's not going to be one that we like. So today, we're going to dive in and figure out, is your culture of feedback rad or is it bad? Okay? If you're not from the 90s, rad means good. All right, here we go. 4 kinds of feedback. There are 4 kinds of feedback we can give people, and I want you guys to really listen. If you're a note taker, please take notes on this. If you're not a note taker, please take notes on this because this is what's changed my life, all right? Now, there's a book called Radical Candor by Kim Scott. She was an executive at Google, Apple, all other kinds of places. I carry around with me all the time. Mine's all faded and not orange like that anymore. But I love this book. I'm not going to sit here and take credit like I just came up with all this, okay? This is out of the book. And I encourage you, if you're serious about creating a great feedback culture, go check out this book. It's great, all right? So, let's look at this chart. There's what they call a radical candor chart, okay? You got 2 lines. You got care personally and challenge directly, okay? Care personally meaning that person that's on your team, that person, listen, that's in your family, right? This stretches even outside the bounds of work, right? How much do you care personally about them, right? But next, can you challenge them directly? Can you say it like it is? Now, I'm going to show you the chart here, and we're going to run through where you land on each one of these. First of all, let's take this top corner. If you care personally and you challenge directly, you're in the best zone. You're in radical candor, all right? You're communicating clearly with people in a way that they can hear and understand you, and they know they're cared about, but they also understand that they've done something that needs challenging, right? Next, you've got obnoxious aggression. That's where you don't care, but you still just tell it like it is. How many people know somebody like that right now in this room? Show your hands. Once again, all people with your hands down, you're liars. We got to talk about that later, all right? Everyone knows someone like this. They just say it straight, like, hey, man, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but boom, and they just tell you, right? They're the guy that just yells it out. We're gonna get to some examples later. I know so many people like this, right? Here's the positive. The positive is you challenged them directly. You said what needed to be said. The problem is they didn't hear you because you didn't care about them, right? Now let's get to 2 of the worst ones. How could it be worse than that? It gets worse. Let's talk about ruinous empathy. Ruinous empathy. Don't type out words you can't say, right? Ruinous empathy, okay? This is where you care so much about somebody, but you can't challenge them directly. This is probably like, for me, my grandmother, right? I love her dearly, and I care about her too much to give her some serious feedback sometimes, right? But it's not just my grandma. It happens all the time. Think about someone that you care about so much that when it comes to when they drop the ball, when they do something wrong, when you got to have a tough conversation, we don't. We don't. We say, hey, it's fine. It's good. That's just who they are. It's fine. We shelter them, right? I hear you laughing because you know you do it, because I do it. And then finally, let's get to the worst one. And I'm going to be honest with you. This is where I failed. This is where I continue to fail. And I hope some of you are like me, and that we can all get better together. Manipulative insincerity. You don't care, and you don't challenge. Let me tell you what that looks like. the person you walk in every day and you ignore because you don't want to deal with them. It's the person that I'm not going to challenge them because I don't care about them. And if they left tomorrow, that'd be fine with me. Guys, we can't treat people like that. I treated people like that for a long time, and it burned me. So let's give some examples of what this looks like, okay? I want to give an example, and I want to use a gentleman that I believe is probably one of the greatest gifts that America has given to the world. George Costanza, all right? George Costanza, if you don't know, this is Seinfeld, all right? And if you don't know this is Seinfeld, we can talk later, and I got a lot to tell you, all right? But Seinfeld, you got George Costanza. He's kind of an aloof guy, right? George has gone to the local diner, Monk's Cafe. He's eating lunch, and he's come back to work with some mustard on his face. Now, I'm going to give you this example to break down what radical candor is like in a more simplified version, okay? Radical candor, if you cared personally and challenged directly, you would pull George to the side and you say, hey, George, hey, man, I don't want to embarrass you, but you got a little mustard on your face, and I wanted to tell you before you go out to the next meeting because you're going to look a little silly, right? You pulled him aside. It was between you two, right? You criticized in private. You praised in public. And he said, hey, I get it. I've had mustard on my face before. Hey, I just want to tell you, you got it on there. You need to fix it before somebody sees it, okay? Radical candor, boom, you've done a good job. Obnoxious aggressors out there. You'd be the person that'd be like, hey, George, you saving a little lunch for later? You got mustard on your face, you big idiot. So, okay, so you said it, but you didn't care, right? You said it in front of everybody, right? Now everybody's laughing at George, and George gets the mustard off his face, but you're a jerk, right? Let's talk about ruinous empathy. You are so worried that saying something will embarrass George, so you don't say anything, and you hope somebody else will. So George continues to walk around with mustard on his face, and other people notice it, and somebody else will tell him, but you didn't have to because you don't want to hurt George's feelings. That sound familiar? It does for me. Now let's get to the worst one. Manipulative insincerity. Now listen, we're using a silly example with Seinfeld, but I want you to listen to this because this is huge. You say nothing, not because you're worried that you'll hurt George's feelings, but because you're worried about what people will think about you. You're worried that if you give him the feedback, people will look at you, oh, he's grumpy. Oh, he's a mean person. Oh, he's whatever. So you don't say anything because you're worried about your reputation. But then you do the thing that we all do. You tell everybody else to go look at the mustard on George's face. You can't tell George, but you can tell everybody else in the office. Anybody guilty of that? I am. You don't have to raise your hand if you don't want to, but I am. I can talk to everybody but the person I need to talk to. I've been guilty of that. I've been guilty of that at RNR. And I've had to change. Now, let me ask you, where are you on this chart? Okay? Where are you? Next question is, where's your team on this chart? Listen, I had this whole presentation planned out where I was going to come in here and do the 3 R's of retaining your team, you know? And then I said, you know what? I don't have the answer for how to retain your team. You know who does have the answer? Your team does. And if you build a great culture of feedback, you'll know where you're dropping the ball. You'll know where you can fix some problems. And so we're going to dive in and look at how we give feedback, right? Let's talk about giving feedback. As leaders, we got to give feedback. It's hard. It's not easy. It's difficult, right? But I think we can do it in 3 ways that make it more effective. Number 1, we're going to do it humbly, right? As a leader, okay, you have to understand the weight that you carry as a leader. You may think, hey, I'm just a regular old, Tom, Dick, and Jane over here, and I'm just putting this role to lead people. Well, guess what? The second that you control somebody else's paycheck or livelihood or whatever else, you're a leader, and that's a big freaking deal. That's a big deal, right? And when you come to them with feedback, if you come in hot and heavy, if you're an obnoxious aggressor, chances are you're not going to get what you want. Because people are going to tell you what you want to hear, but they're not going to tell you what they're really thinking. So let's talk about how we approach people and be humble about it. Number 1, we're going to not personalize negative feedback, okay? When you got negative feedback to give somebody, you want to focus on the problem, not the person, right? The problem is this. The problem is not Terry. You know what I'm saying? Because if you personalize negative, oh, Terry's just a problem. Guess what? Terry will always be a problem. because we're not doing what we need to do to get Terry to the place where he's doing things right. Because we just be like, oh, Terry's an idiot. That's what he does. I said that, right? Next, more feedback and less fussiness. Let me explain this one. I am a perfectionist at heart, right? How I'm still married, I do not know, all right? My wife should have packed her bags and walked out like, I don't know, hour 1 of our marriage, okay? Because I can be so incredibly fussy, right? I'm talking about little things, like little petty things that don't matter, okay? I'm like, oh my God, babe. True story. We got married, and I was more upset at how my wife loaded the dishwasher than I couldn't just accept that, hey, my wife just helped out and loaded the dishwasher. I'm like, okay, babe, look, the bowls don't go up here, they go down there, you got to put this over there. Okay, I've done that, right? And I know you have too. When you're giving feedback to your team, make sure you're not just nitpicking. Make sure you're not being a perfectionist. Listen, there's a rule in marriage that can probably go across every industry you work in. Hey, leave about 3 things unsaid every day. Because you start nitpicking people, you start crushing their soul at work. That nothing they can do is right. Focus on the big things. Let the little things go. Look at yourself first. Ouch. Take ownership. Maybe Terry stinks because of you. Maybe you haven't given Terry, like Derek was saying, the training that Terry needed. I hope there's no Terrys in here. I'm sorry. Maybe you haven't. I'm not talking about you, Terry, if you're out there, okay? Maybe Terry needed a little bit more care, but gosh, man, Terry just talks so much. Maybe Terry's problems are your problems. Take ownership. Before you give feedback and start to go in and have those tough conversations, say, hey, what can I do that can fix this situation before I ever have to go talk to Terry? Next, we want to have it be helpful. See, I'm doing this H thing. I voted the R conversation, but we're still doing H's, so hold on, all right? Humble or helpful is our next one. Helpful. How do we make feedback helpful? How do we keep it helpful? When you're going to give feedback to somebody, you want to make sure they hear it and receive it, right? Here's a little nugget for you. Here's a little bonus you can write in the margins of your notes. When people give you feedback, they're trying to help you. They're not trying to make you mad. They're not trying to crap on your day or your name or anything else. They're doing it because they want to help you. And when you give feedback to people, you should be doing the same thing. You want to do it because you want to help them. Here's how you can make it helpful. Show more than you tell. You can talk all day long. Why don't you get out there and show them how to use that tire machine, manager? Right? Why don't you get out there and show them how to run that report? Right? Take time to show people. Don't just tell them. People need to learn by getting hands-on. Hey, guess what? Sometimes you can't help them. Sometimes you can't be the one to help. You want to really show somebody you care? Be like, hey, man, I know you're having a problem with this, that, and the other. We got somebody that's going to come in and help you out. I hired a specialist to come in and help you out with this. Hey, I'm going to send you to do some training over here because I think that would be the best. You aren't always the answer. You don't always have to be the hero. Find people other than yourself to help. And I love this one. I love this one. Be very clear in your feedback. Very clear in your feedback. 92% of respondents agreed that feedback, when delivered appropriately, is effective at improving performance. Read that number again. 92% of people said feedback, when given correctly, is awesome. Use this model. Situation, behavior, impact. When you're talking to people, think of it like 3 check boxes. Situation, behavior, impact. Ready? Here's an example. Tim, for the last time, this shop is disgusting. Get out there and clean it up. Okay, that's pretty good. But why don't we give Tim a little bit more to work with here? Why don't we explain the situation, the behavior that's gotten us here, and the impact? That might look like this. Hey, Tim, can I talk to you for a second? The shop is pretty messy, my man. And that's because we really haven't developed a solid routine for cleaning. Not only does this hurt our efficiency, but it also creates an unsafe working environment for the rest of our team members. That's a big difference, guys. Now Tim knows, oh, the shop's not clean because I don't have a regular thing put in place to do it, and this is what the cause is. When people understand what they're doing and they understand why they're getting a negative response, then they can change. If you're just pissed, They don't know what you're mad about, right? And that's when you get people look at you like, what's the boss so mad about all the time? I don't understand why they talk to me that way, right? You got to they have to understand so they can correct and fix it. Here's a bonus for you. It works even better when you do it on the positive side of feedback. Man, how many people in this room, show of hands, no liars this time, all right, like a good attaboy? There we go. That's what I'm talking about. I'm just really getting you guys to stretch today. That's really all this is. Everybody likes a good attaboy, right? So you know what you can help your team with? Tell them how to get the attaboys, right? Or attagirls, okay? Jess, you crushed it today with your new account manager. Hey, that's great. How did Jess crush it? She doesn't know. She goes home and thinks, well, I did this and maybe, check this out. Hey, Jess, while training your new account manager today, you showed an incredible amount of patience and care. That kind of leadership not only sets us up for success, but also makes our team feel valued. You're going to have to use a little more words than you're used to, but it goes a long way, right? It goes a long way. Now, the last H for giving feedback is hurried. We're going to make it quick. 80% of team members want feedback at the moment rather than delivering aggregated feedback for an annual or quarterly review. Got a few more for you. Check this out. 60% of employees reported wanting feedback on a daily or weekly basis. For workers under 30, that number increased to 72%. It's easy to think, especially with our younger team members, that they don't want feedback. They don't want to hear it. Maybe we're just not giving it the right way. Because studies show, this ain't my made-up number, right? I went on the internet, and everything there is true, right? 72%. I've vetted my sources, guys, okay? All right, 72%. This is important, okay? This is where I really fail with feedback a lot, me personally, okay? Feedback has a very short lifespan. Let me tell you why. You see somebody mess up, do something good, somebody that does do something bad, or somebody that does something good. If you wait to tell them till the end of the week, they now have no frame of reference for what they did or didn't do to get that feedback. You got to do it then. And that's tough, but you got to do it then. Hey, guys, can you just take a second? Hey, I'm really sorry. Hey, can you clean up the shop real quick because it's a little messy over here? Hey, I need to talk to you real quick. Can you do me a favor? I really need you to work on your time management because we're kind of behind on this right now. If you wait, you lose the impact. They can't look back and be like, oh, yeah, that's what I did that was negative, or that's what I did that was positive, right? You want to give it in a hurry. Unspoken criticism tends to explode. You carry a grudge whether you like it or not. You hold in feedback, that's when Terry becomes an idiot, right? When Terry is just worthless, right? And then Terry makes you so mad that one day you just lose it, right? You just lose your temper and say, I'm sick and tired of you always do this all the time, just get out of my sight, right? You don't want that, man. You're a leader. You got to get that feedback out in a hurry, or it's going to tear you up inside and it's going to lead you to explode. Also, it keeps it more factual and less fluffy, right? When you have to sit down and do a performance review with somebody, you go, hey, well, listen, Terry, we got to talk. There's this thing that you did, and it's not a big deal, but you said it like this, and no, just say it right there, right? Keep it factual. Hey, Terry, you can't talk to your other team members like that. Boom. Now, to sum it all up, team members actually want feedback. We just need to remember to keep it humble, helpful, and hurried in order to build a positive feedback culture. Now comes the fun one. Receiving feedback. Let me tell you a real story. I went to dinner last night with some of our managers, and we were having a great conversation. And in that conversation, one of them looked across at me and said, yeah, that training you put out was pretty crap. It did. I'll point him out, but I'm not going to do it to him, right? Now, only the managers are laughing over here, by the way. They know. Okay, so here's the deal. That's not fun to hear, but you got to hear it. I'm going to say this as clear as I can. When you become a leader, you find yourself in a positive feedback loop. It's easy to think that you're checking every box and doing everything right because you don't get negative feedback. Guys, unless you ask for it, you're not gonna get it usually. You gotta ask for it. We're gonna talk about that in a second, but before we get into any of this, serious moment here. This is tough. I promise you, these next 3-4 slides, if you get this, If you inject this into your veins and you live this, you'll keep your team. You'll keep them. All right? So hang with me, because we're about to go through a little stretching here. All right? Here's the chart again. Figure out where you are right now as a leader. When you talk to your people, when your people come to you and they're giving you feedback, all right, where are you landing here? Where do they land when they talk to you, more importantly? Okay? How your team gives feedback depends entirely upon how you receive it. Entirely. You start building the feedback culture by how you receive feedback. And listen, it takes a strong person to receive feedback. It's not easy. I'm not going to lie to you. But I'm going to give you one word that's going to help you out. Your people need to feel. And when I click this, I want everybody to say this big word on the screen together very boisterously, okay? Can you do that for me? I'm giving you a little prep here, okay? Your team needs to feel safe. You control their paycheck. They go home every night to a house, to a car, to kids that they feed with your money. Okay? They're not going to feel comfortable giving you feedback if they make you mad and you take that away. If when they give you feedback, you're not responding correctly, that you're making them feel unsafe, they're never going to give you feedback again. Let's go through a few of these real quick. When a team member feels heard, they are 4.6 times more likely to feel empowered to perform to the best of their abilities. Got another one for you. And watch these two really closely. 78% of the reason team members quit could have been prevented by the employer. Think about that. Think of all the people that have left our organization. 78% of the issues they had could have been fixed by us if we just would have known. Why did we not know? Because they're afraid to tell us. Because they take that $1 an hour somewhere else, and let me tell you guys, it ain't about the dollar. 63% of employees don't trust their leader. They don't trust us, right? We got to fix that, and I know we can. Your team must trust you, okay? There's a great thing. I'm going to show you this real quick. There's a difference in trust and respect, okay? With the millennial generation, which I know we like to think of millennial generations as being people who are still, got Dorito dust fingers and playing PlayStation in a dorm room somewhere. Millennials are now 26 to 41. They're your workforce. Right? They're now fathers and mothers and, more. The difference in that generation and the one before it is the generation before it valued respect. They respect somebody. They're the boss. You get positional respect because of who you are. I got bad news. That's not the way it works anymore. People got to trust you. They got to trust you. You can have respect all day and never have trust. But you can't have trust without respect. If somebody trusts you, they inherently respect you. So, somebody said this at SEMA, and I thought it was great, so I brought it to you. Also not my idea, not taking credit for it, all right? You must build a bridge of trust strong enough to support a truckload of truth. If you got something you got to tell somebody, but they don't trust you, they're not going to hear you. They're going to tune you out, they're going to block you out. But if we can build that bridge of trust, if we can create that relationship, they're happy to hear what you got to say because they know you care. Let's talk about how we encourage radical candor in our organizations. We're going to ask for feedback, and we're going to get an answer. Now, let me explain what that means. You can ask people for feedback. It happened to me like 2 days ago, right? Somebody's like, hey, do you got any feedback for me, right? And I was like, hey, no, I'm good. I think I'm good, right? But I wasn't good. And most of the time when you ask people for feedback, like, hey, no, boss, I'm good. Man, you gotta live in that awkward silence and be like, hey, Terry, I need you to tell me something I can be doing better. The only way I can get better if you tell me. Encourage it, push it out. Maybe have a question you ask where you say something like, hey, what's one thing I can do or stop doing that makes your job better? And let them answer. You got to get an answer, right? You got to hear them out. Allow for the team to publicly criticize you. Praise in public, criticize in private works unless you're a leader. And then people get to criticize you in public. Do you know why? Because it allows others to feel empowered and know that you receive feedback well. It lets their guard down to talk to you, to trust you more. If your team, right, sees a leader that somebody can be like, hey, boss, I completely disagree with that, right? And you go, okay, let's talk about it. Then those other team members know, like, hey, I can talk to my guy. He's listening. He knows. Allow them to criticize you in public because it'll help your image. Listen to understand, not respond. I got a pet peeve. I'm just going to say it. When I give you feedback and the first thing out of your mouth is, well, I completely disagree, you have completely killed feedback. You have destroyed it. Now look, I've done that a ton, right? You have to listen to understand. Listen to listen. Don't be thinking about what you're going to say. 4.6 times more likely to enjoy their job if they feel heard. Sometimes you ain't got to do anything to fix the problem. People just want to feel heard, man. They want to feel like you're listening when they're talking. They want to be able to trust you and know that their job has their back and that they can just talk about what's going on and not have to go inside every day hating work. They can't wait for 5 o'clock to come because it's time to go because I hate this place. They just want to be heard. We got to listen to understand, not respond. Reward criticism to get more, okay? That's an easy one. We're not going to spend a lot of time here. When somebody gives you feedback, be positive about it. Reward them for it. Hey, man, I just want to say, hey, real quick, guys, Terry came to me with some feedback, all right, and I thought it was actually really good. We're going to institute a quick change right now because I think it's the best thing for our company. Reward it. Conduct a regular feedback assessment. Look, here's the deal. If all the feedback you're getting is good feedback, you haven't created an atmosphere of safe feedback. Who in here is perfect? Raise your hand. Nobody. Think on the last 3 months. Have you had somebody on your team walk up to you and criticize you? Tell you something that you've done wrong? Tell you something you could have been better at? Take stock. Because if you can't think about it, or if you can only think of one or two, maybe you got to work on creating a better environment that people can give safe feedback. Sorry, Kevin, we ran out of time. We're going to skip you. All right. So here's the deal. I want to give you some final thoughts. A healthy culture of feedback increases retention by allowing team members to have a voice and encourages them to bring their full self to work each and every day. But it starts with you. Guys, I'm going to tell you right now, we are blessed that we get to do what we get to do. You have been chosen to be a leader in this organization, in your families, outside of this place, in your civic clubs or whatever you join. But I want you, when you go in every day, if you have people that you serve, if you have people that report to you, I want you to remember what it was like to be them. I want you to remember what it was like before you made it to this room. Remember that job you had that you hated. Remember that boss you had that you hated. Remember a time where you felt like you weren't heard or nobody listened to you or you couldn't get anything changed. Those people work with us. They do. Might be 1, might be 20, might be 200. I hope not. That'd be terrible. But here's the deal. Guys, they're leaving because A, they don't feel heard, or B, we didn't give them feedback properly, timely enough, that they felt like they were terrible at their job and they just leave. They're going to go find someplace better. There's an old saying that goes, people usually don't leave a job, they leave a person. People usually don't leave a job, they leave a person. Don't be that person. I know that every single person in here, and many of you do it already, so many, you guys have the potential, like we consider you right now some of the greatest leaders out there. If we're going to be the best tire and wheel concept in America, if we want to get those Indeed reviews up, if you want to have people organically go to Indeed to tell people about how great it is, guys, we got to be better at feedback. Me included. Me included. Guys, thanks so much for listening today. If you got any questions, I'll be in the back, and see you later.